Story 1. I did cold turkey. It's been 6 years now. I screwed up here and there in the beginning having a few cigarettes, but I just kept going, and finally, I kicked it. I started to date someone who didn't smoke, and that really helped me stop. This was my fourth try, and finally, I can say this is it. I will never touch a cigarette again. I also had to quit drinking. I didn't drink all the time, but if I did have even one glass of wine, it lowered my willpower and I'd have a setback. So I basically gave up both. Honestly, I feel better than ever. I also exercise. It's really a huge life change, but I'd start just by stopping smoking, and the rest will follow. Good luck. Story 2. I would highly recommend Alan Carr's book, The Easy Way to Stop Smoking. I quit cold turkey after reading it and have also given copies to 2 friends who have done the same. Story 3. Not a smoker, but I used chewing tobacco for over 20 years. My new girlfriend made a comment that she would never date anyone who uses chewing tobacco. This happened about 3 weeks into our relationship. I threw away everything when I left her place. That was over 12 years ago. I have been married for 11 years with a 10-year-old child. I still miss using chewing tobacco at the end of a long day. Story 4. Couldn't buy cigarettes on the ferry. Kept my last one for the final segment of the drive, and when I got home, I still hadn't used it. It was late, so I put the cigarette on top of my television for the morning. Decided to see if I could make it through the day, and so on and so on. One of the hardest things was what to do with my hands. Chewed a lot of coffee stir sticks, and that really helped. 40 years free now. Story 5. The thing that worked for me was just simple. Stop cold turkey, resist the first 48 hours, then keep strong the first couple of times going out for drinks. Within a month, you won't know any better. Story 6. Reading Alan Carr's The Easy Way to Stop Smoking practically brainwashes you into seeing how silly of a habit it really is. And believe me, before I read it, I thought the idea of a book making me quit was a silly idea. Story 7. I had an intervention by the spirits in the cemetery, and that made me quit that night 100%. It has been more than 10 years. I don't expect you to believe me, but this is how I quit smoking. Story 8. Read The Easy Way to Stop Smoking by Alan Carr. I used to smoke 3 packs a day, and I quit cold turkey immediately after finishing the book. It's been years, and I haven't had a craving since. I owe this man my life. Story 9. Willpower. Realize it's not a decision that you make once, but one you have to make repeatedly all day long. And you have to tell yourself that no matter what, your decision is always no cigarettes. Also, tracking your cigarettes for the first few days, even without cutting down, helps. Good news is it gets easier after about 3 days. After 2 weeks, it's not hard to say no anymore. After a year or so, you don't have to make the decision anymore. It's gone and smoking seems gross. I don't know how people stop vaping. I never started. It seems impossible though, like Big Tobacco realized people could quit cigarettes if they tried hard enough, so they came up with something 10 levels harder to stop. Good luck, you can do it. Story 10. Went to bed Sunday night and woke up in an intensive critical care unit Wednesday morning. The stroke was not related to smoking, aneurysm, but being paralyzed on the right side got my attention. That was in 2005. I made a good recovery, about 90%. When the doctor released me, he told me I had quit smoking and I did not need to restart. Easier said than done, but I powered my way through the nicotine fits and stayed the course. Story 11. Was buying a house and did the math and realized I could already own like 3 to 4 pinball machines if I had never started. Quit cold turkey and am now saving up for those pinball machines ever so slowly. Story 12. Kidney infection made me stop everything for 10 days. 0 caffeine, sugar, meat, tobacco, alcohol, nothing but water and cabbage basically. I didn't have the craving for cigarettes at the end of it all, so I just stayed away. It worked. I still smoke blunts from time to time though, but I haven't bought a pack since 2015. Story 13. I did it with toothpicks and mints. My son was getting breathing treatments and I knew I had to be the cause. It made me quit a 3 to 4 pack a day habit cold turkey. Story 14. I smoked for over 40 years and quit cold turkey. I have been smoke-free for 10 years now. I tried many times before but was unsuccessful because I was always trying to quit for someone else, such as my kids, my wife, or even my parents. I believe the key to actually quitting is to truly want to quit for yourself. When that desire is genuine, your chances of success improve significantly. Story 15. The wife had been begging for years. So, one weekend, I got really sick and ended up getting bronchial pneumonia, and I was in bed sick for 4 days. I couldn't smoke during that time. The wife bought me the patch and said, "You can do it." I replaced cigarettes with hot lemon ginger tea, which helped a lot. For some reason, it curbed the sensation of wanting a cigarette. That, along with the patch, helped. I ran out of patches and just drank the horrible lemon ginger tea morning, lunch, and dinner whenever I really wanted to smoke. I've been smoke-free since 2017. Story 16. When I tried playing with my daughter in the park and couldn't catch up to her. Thankfully, I've quit and replaced it with eating a whole Jell-O cake every time I get the urge to calm the nerves. I still can't, to this day, catch up to my daughter, but at least I'm nicotine-free. Story 17. I used patches for a week and started feeling sick from them, so I stopped. I was smoking 2.5 packs a day because we were allowed to smoke inside at work at that time. Story 18. I have agoraphobia and cannot go outside without being accompanied by a person I trust. The person I trusted to go outside with and smoke died of pulmonary issues related to smoking. Since I can't go outside alone and I can't smoke inside my apartment, I quit. Story 19. Having kids. My son asked if I smoked and I said yes. He then told me how bad it was and how he didn't want me to die. I haven't touched one since. That was 10 years ago. Story 20. I was so sick from bronchitis that I was in bed on antibiotics and strong decongestants for a month. During that time, I quit. I went through the worst parts of withdrawal from my 2-pack per day habit during that time. When I went back to work, I couldn't afford cigarettes for a month, and so after 2 months cigarette-free, I just kept it going. That was 27 years ago. Story 21. I vaped and lowered the nicotine percentage in the juice to the lowest I could buy, then started diluting it with 0%. After reducing it to 1 milligram, I switched to 0 and threw the vape away. Best decision of my life. Story 22. The smoke literally would make me nauseous. I stopped back in 2012 with gum and willpower. Picked it back up in 2015 for just a few months until I switched to using electronic cigarettes. Using electronic cigarettes was so hard for me to quit. But gladly, I haven't used electronic cigarettes in over a year now. Story 23. I used Wellbutrin for a few months. It was the first time I was able to quit and not have the physical cravings. I was highly motivated after many failed attempts. It's been 14 years. Story 24. Cancer diagnosis. Happily unrelated to smoking, but it was a rather aggressive form of leukemia. Got pretty lucky and was put in remission 22 years ago. But hey, saved a ton of money on cigarettes since then. Story 25. After working out at the gym, I would have a smoke before driving home. A lady sees me and shows me a video of a smoker's aorta artery. They cut it out of the body, then squeezed it, and a bunch of cottage cheese stuff came out of it. Thanks, lady. Story 26. I didn't smoke, but I used chewing tobacco for 30 years. Quitting nicotine wasn't hard. Quitting the habits or activities I did while using chewing tobacco was hard. Slowly, it got better. It will be 10 years in July. I don't regret it at all. I'm saving a good chunk of change every month too. Story 27. Make the decision to quit, drive along the highway, open the window, and throw the packet of cigarettes out. Never buy it again. It's difficult to get through those first 2 weeks, but it gets better with time. Story 28. It turned out I have anxiety, and I had a severe onset with panic attacks for about 2 weeks straight. I was convinced I had some terminal illness, so I quit smoking cold turkey. My anxiety calmed down, and it has never flared up like that again, but I never went back to smoking. I have not smoked in over 15 years. Story 29. I've quit 3 times now. The first time, I quit cigarettes and started vaping nicotine. Then I finally had to quit vaping. I had been nicotine-free for years until COVID-19 hit. I'm an emergency room nurse, and it was really bad for a while. I started vaping to get through my shifts. then returned to cigarettes eventually. I finally quit again last year. I never want to have to quit nicotine again. It's such a pain. I've never used any method, just persevered through it. Once you get past 2 weeks, it's okay. I've quit weed, alcohol, and nicotine in my life, and nicotine is the hardest. Story 30. Got a DUI and spent 6 months in jail with 0 cigarettes. I had smoked 2 packs plus a day for years before. Tried to quit a few times and would light a smoke with a patch on. After day 5, I was free and never went back. Took a couple of years to rid myself of the physical habits like reaching into a t-shirt pocket and pants pocket at the same time. Not wanting a smoke, just that reaction. 24 years free after smoking for 28. 8 years beer-free. Story 31. I quit and started again a few times, as have most. The withdrawal symptoms of the first couple of weeks are just so unbearable. So finally, this last time I tried something new to lessen the withdrawal symptoms. Over a series of several weeks, I cut back on the number of cigarettes I smoked. Then for the last month, I only smoked a couple of puffs of cigarettes a day and never during my most tempting times, like never when I first got up, after meals, with coffee, or before bed. I waited for the urge to pass and instead had it when I didn't have the urge so strong. I haven't had a cigarette since October 10th, 2021, and my cravings have pretty much been gone for quite some time now. I can still drink coffee and alcohol without cravings, but had to eliminate alcohol for a few months because it would make the cravings come back. I had smoked for 16 years prior to quitting this time around. Story 32. I started chewing tobacco. It's not good for you either, but at least it gives your lungs a break. Then I found it much easier to quit chewing tobacco. Story 33. I lit a cigarette 18 years ago, and it tasted terrible. I crumpled it up, threw away an entire pack, and never looked back. I'm not sure what did it, but I knew at that moment that I was done. I will admit that a cigarette sounds wonderful every once in a while, but I know that if I do it, I'll be off to the races, so I don't. Story 34. Transitioned to vaping. I am still addicted to nicotine. I am just using a different method of consuming it. I actually want to try that FUM thing to see if it is a better alternative, but I do not know. Seems like a drag to constantly buy the oils for that product. Story 35. This is going to sound insane, but I was a smoker for years and smoked heavily. One day I got hot Cheeto dust on the tip of my Lucky cigarette, and since I didn't want to smoke hot Cheeto dust, I took it as a sign to quit. I've never made a better choice in my life and have been smoke-free for 3 years now. Story 36. The first time I switched to vaping, I reduced the nicotine percentage every month until I reached the lowest possible level. I continued this for a few months and then decided to quit one day. Leaving a high-stress job at the same time probably helped. Unfortunately, I started smoking again during the pandemic. In hindsight, I should have given myself more time to taper off again, but I was upset with myself and wanted to stop immediately, so I ended up using a prescription medication to quit smoking. The side effects were so horrible and long-lasting that I would never recommend it except as a last resort. Story 37. I quit cold turkey 18 years ago. The dentist asked me to smoke on the other side of my mouth for a few weeks because there was a spot she didn't like. If it didn't heal in a few weeks, we could get a biopsy. So boom. My wife was a big help. I had quit a couple of times before using gum and pills, but I always started up again. I think what helped me stick with it this time was talking to a good friend who was in Alcoholics Anonymous. He gave me a few pointers, but I was a nicotine addict and still think about it occasionally. Story 38. Cannot speak for myself, but I had a grandfather that smoked a lot. He had a heart attack in his early to mid-40s. The doctors said it was due to diet and smoking. He was raised in Missouri, so he liked Southern food. He quit smoking cold turkey once he left the hospital. At 50, he had a stroke, and that is what took him. I share many of his attributes minus smoking, but I always feel like I am going to follow in his footsteps at the age of 50. 5.5 years to go. Story 39. Patches for a week, then smelled my mom and her house. I can no longer be around smokers or in a smoker's house without getting a migraine and feeling sick. It's been 15 years smoke-free. Story 40. I could not do it for myself. I wanted to but kept giving in. I asked my girlfriend, now wife, to ask me to quit. Once I had someone I really cared for to hold me accountable, I found the will to do it. I also started running around that time to give me an extra reason to keep it up. Story 41. I'm vaping. Slowly transitioning to less. It's better than quitting cold turkey. It's much cheaper, and I'm no longer spending 20 a day on cigarettes. I spend that money on my hobbies now, and I'm very happy for it. Story 42. Anti-anxiety medications for a short time. Not me, but my mother. She often tried to quit throughout my whole childhood, but always failed and started again. Sometime when I was in college, she quit again, but her doctor gave her anti-anxiety medications, which she took for about 6 months. It got her through the withdrawal phase. It's been 30 years, and she's never been tempted again. Story 43. I didn't want to put pants on to go to the store that morning to buy another pack. Smoking was an inconvenience in my daily life. I was done. I lit a cigarette that morning, looked at the last 3 in that pack and said, "Forget it." I dropped the freshly lit cigarette and went back inside. I haven't smoked since, even though my wife continued to smoke a couple of years after I quit. Story 44. Over 40 years ago, I had to quit drinking alcohol and going to the bar. It took months before I lost the urge to smoke. I'm back to social drinking but have no desire to smoke at all. Story 45. Brain surgery. Didn't think of a cigarette once while I was in the hospital. Thought, why have one just because I walk through the door? Almost 10 years now,